The May breeze, heralding the end of spring, gently swept through the quiet residential streets of Scarsdale. Melissa Brown sat on her parents' porch, slowly sipping tea while gazing at the hydrangeas blooming in the garden. She tenderly cradled her 8-month pregnant belly with both hands. Around her neck, the pearl necklace, a wedding gift from her mother, softly gleamed in the light. "Melissa, it's time for your blood pressure medication." Turning at her mother Ellen's voice, she was met with a gentle smile and her medication. It had been a month since her diagnosis with pregnancy-induced hypertension. Following strong recommendations from her doctor at Lenox Hill Hospital, she had decided to rest at her parents' home. "Thank you, Mom. The quietness of this house is exactly what I need right now." The single-story house was built in the 1970s. Since her father Robert's retirement from his university professorship, the atmosphere had grown even more serene. History books lined his study in neat rows, her mother's hand-knitted throws adorned the living room, and the warmth of family could be felt in every corner. This tranquility was the ideal environment for Melissa, who had been leading a hectic life in Manhattan. "Dad's roses are beautiful this year too." Watching her father tending to the garden, Melissa felt a deep sense of gratitude. Though traditionally minded, he had always respected his daughter's life choices. Together with her mother, a former elementary school teacher, they had created this haven of comfort. However, this peace was always disturbed when her sister Caroline visited. Caroline, divorced 2 years ago due to her extravagant lifestyle, had since become dependent on their parents. Melissa felt uncomfortable seeing her sister arrive in flashy clothes and post about her luxurious life at their parents' home on social media. Just yesterday, she had been showing off an obviously counterfeit designer bag. "We really are complete opposites." Murmuring this, Melissa recalled their meeting 3 years ago. Working as an accountant at a major firm, her encounter with James during a new client's audit seemed like destiny. Attracted to his intellectual charm and sociable nature as the owner of a real estate development company, they had a smooth courtship before marriage, settling in an upscale neighborhood in Westchester County. Initially, their married life seemed ideal. They would drive their luxury car on weekends, enjoy dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants, and post enviable moments on social media. But in retrospect, perhaps it was only superficial happiness. In the months following her pregnancy announcement, subtle signs of discord began to emerge. Her husband started coming home later, working more weekends. James, always impeccably dressed in designer suits with a perfect smile, but his eyes betrayed a hint of anxiety. Most concerning was Caroline's increasingly frequent visits to their home. "I just dropped by for tea," her sister would say, but Melissa's unease only grew. Her accountant's intuition warned of something serious lurking beneath. The discrepancies she noticed in her husband's company's financial statements, the unnatural movement of numbers across multiple real estate development projects, this was likely just the tip of the iceberg. Living in their newly built mansion, yet somehow facing a growing pile of unpaid bills. Late payment notices for the luxury car loan. Despite the outward glamour, something was definitely crumbling. Melissa closed her eyes quietly, feeling her baby's movements as she let out a deep sigh. As the spring weather gradually gave way to early summer's warmth, she could sense a storm brewing within her heart. "It's okay. We'll definitely get through this." Speaking as if to the life within her, Melissa smiled quietly. Touching her pearl necklace, she had already begun meticulous preparations for what was to come. Her expertise as an accountant and cool judgment would be her greatest weapons. On a peaceful Sunday morning in June, as a pleasant early summer breeze rustled the hydrangeas in the garden, the doorbell rang at her parents' house. The curtains swayed in the wind, casting pleasant dappled sunlight into the living room. On the table lingered traces of the breakfast Ellen had carefully prepared, the sweet aroma of French toast and the steam rising from Melissa's favorite chamomile tea. When Ellen answered the door, a delivery person stood there holding a large cardboard box and an envelope. The box had a "handle with care" sticker, and the envelope was visibly thick with documents. Package for Ms. Brown. The sender's name was James Brown, Melissa's husband. Ellen accepted the packages with a sense of foreboding. Her maternal instinct, which had lately noticed the tension between her daughter and son-in-law, sensed something ominous about these deliveries. "Melissa, there's a delivery from James." Melissa slowly rose from where she had been relaxing in the living room. Her maternity dress gently draped over her growing belly. Though the packages arrived during a peaceful post-breakfast moment, her eyes already held a look of resolution. Touching her pearl necklace, she took a deep breath. "Thank you, Mom." She opened the envelope first. Inside were divorce papers and a letter. The divorce papers were new, already bearing her husband's seal. Robert looked up from his beloved financial newspaper, his expression troubled. Deep wrinkles formed between the old professor's brows. The letter was written in her husband's hasty handwriting with a luxury fountain pen costing over $1,000, reflecting his impetuous nature. To Melissa. "Let's end our marriage here. I've decided to be with Caroline. We'll be living in the house, so I've sent your belongings to your parents' home. Sign the divorce papers and send them back. That's all." The letter showed no gratitude or consideration for their married life. It revealed the true nature of her husband, who had charmed everyone with his perfect smile and designer suits. At that moment, Melissa's smartphone chimed with a notification. The name displayed was Caroline, a message from her sister. "Sorry, sis. But I'm the one who belongs in that mansion. James said so too. Don't worry, I'll take perfect care of the house in your place. You don't need to come back." The message included a selfie of her sister relaxing in the mansion's living room. She sat on the familiar luxury sofa, smiling with a wine glass in hand. In the background was the houseplant Melissa had cherished. The photo clearly showed that they were already living together. A heavy silence fell over the living room. Ellen covered her trembling mouth with her hand, tears in her eyes. Robert's face contorted with anger as he clenched his fist. Their anger and sorrow mingled at this cruel treatment of their pregnant daughter. However, it was surprisingly Melissa's clear voice that broke the heavy atmosphere. "Really? Thank you. If you want that house, I'll gladly give it to you. Enjoy your new life." Her tone was cheerful, and her expression showed a strange sense of peace. Her parents wore confused expressions, speechless at their daughter's unexpected reaction. Yet Melissa's face showed a peculiar calmness. In fact, she wore a slight smile. She looked as if a long-carried burden had been lifted from her shoulders. "Melissa, are you okay? What about the baby?" In response to her mother's worried voice, Melissa nodded gently. Placing her hand on her belly and feeling her child's movements, she answered, "Yes, I'm actually relieved. I think this is the best outcome for all of us. I'm sure the baby understands too. Melissa calmly spread out the divorce papers, checking their contents. Her demeanor was as composed as if she were reviewing routine accounting documents. There was the unwavering professional gaze she had cultivated through years as an accountant. "Mom, Dad, can we have a family meeting?" Her parents nodded, unable to hide their agitation. Robert carefully folded his newspaper and removed his reading glasses. Ellen sat down on the sofa beside her daughter, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "Actually, I have something to tell you. And this is going to unfold in a way no one expected." Melissa carefully set down the divorce papers and straightened her back. Her eyes held a gleam that suggested certainty of victory. The early summer sunlight streaming through the window illuminated her expression, making her appear even more dignified. "In a way, this development was within my expectations. Rather, you could say they've fallen perfectly into the trap I set. As an accountant, it's rare to achieve such a perfect settlement." Saying this, Melissa began her explanation in a calm voice. Her parents held their breath as she spoke. On the table before them lay her prepared documents, neatly arranged. Blue files contained financial statements, red files held real estate documents, and black files contained legal documents, all perfectly classified and organized with the meticulousness cultivated through years of accounting experience. "Actually, I've been conducting my own investigation for the past 3 months. It started with small irregularities. But my accountant's intuition wasn't wrong." Melissa pulled out an accounting report. It was a copy of her husband's company's latest financial statements. Among the columns of numbers, she had identified fatal anomalies. Sections marked with highlighter showed unnatural movements in the figures. "I first noticed something odd during the audit of James's company, Brown Development. In multiple real estate development projects, construction costs were significantly underreported. Compared to standard construction unit prices, they were about 40% lower. That difference must be going somewhere." Ellen looked at the documents with a puzzled expression, while Robert furrowed his brow as he listened to his daughter's explanation. The former university professor's analytical skills seemed to validate his daughter's accuracy. Inflated and underreported construction costs. Delayed payments to subcontractors. And borrowing from loan sharks. "I have evidence of everything." The documents spread across the desk included invoices from business partners, bank transaction details, and photographs of construction sites. Everything was organized chronologically, forming a perfect chain of evidence. But what was decisive was the problem with our mansion. Melissa pulled out the next document. A copy of the building inspection report. It detailed serious issues with the building's foundation. The photos clearly documented the foundation already beginning to crack. They discovered corner cutting in the foundation work. Insufficient concrete strength, inadequate reinforcing bars, defective waterproofing. Repairs will cost at least $1 million. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. The mortgage payments have been in arrears for over a year. The overdue amount already exceeds $150,000. Property taxes are also unpaid, adding another $50,000. I've been hiding the bank's collection notices every day. My husband pretended not to notice. Outside the window, the early summer sunlight brightly illuminated the garden flowers. The hydrangeas showed a gradient from blue to purple. In contrast to this peaceful scene, shocking facts continued to emerge from Melissa's mouth. Similar problems have been discovered in other properties. The luxury apartment complex The Grand and the office building Parkview Tower, both handled by Brown Development, are suspected of serious construction defects. Insufficient foundation strength, defective waterproofing, shoddy plumbing work. Complaints must already be flooding in. She pulled out newspaper clippings from the pile of documents. A small article in an industry paper reported the declining reputation of Brown Development. Within the industry, dangerous signs were already being rumored. Multiple subcontractors are considering legal action over unpaid construction fees. Bank financing is about to stop. At this rate, the company will definitely go bankrupt. But that was part of my plan. Her parents gasped. They were speechless at their daughter's cool analysis and the thorough preparation behind it. This wasn't mere revenge, but perfect professional work. 3 months ago, when I caught the first signs, I immediately began taking action. I started by gathering all the evidence. Melissa pulled out new documents. A purchase contract for a luxury co-op in Manhattan, a historic pre-war building. She had already acquired a 3-bedroom property in a prime Upper East Side location in her name. All procedures were complete. I moved all my assets to separate accounts. I've already opened accounts in Switzerland and the Cayman Islands. Thanks to the prenuptial agreement, I'm protected from my husband's debts. I've already prepared a new residence. A top-floor apartment with views of Central Park. Finally, she showed a retainer agreement with a top law firm. She had already contracted with one of New York's leading divorce attorneys. I've also secured the best legal team in preparation for the divorce. They've already verified all the evidence and developed a perfect legal strategy. Everything is proceeding according to my plan. Ellen took her daughter's hand, tears in her eyes. But why didn't you tell us? If you had consulted with us. Melissa smiled gently. If I had told you, you would have worried, wouldn't you, Mom? Besides, I was waiting for my husband and sister to fall into the trap themselves. Their arrogance was my greatest weapon. Robert let out a deep sigh while gazing proudly at his daughter. You've grown into such a wise daughter. But about Caroline. Leave her to me. I've already calculated the consequences of her choices. I'm not just waiting. I've prepared my own counterattack. This is my final trump card. Melissa pulled out her last trump card. It was decisive evidence of her husband's company's fraud. 5 years' worth of accounting books, off-the-books records, photographic evidence of fraudulent transactions. Detailed records of years of fraudulent trades, tax evasion, and fund misappropriation. Everything was in her hands. My husband and sister chose to live in the mansion. But they don't know how much of a burden that house will become. Debts, repair costs, tax arrears. Everything will snowball. And they don't know how much preparation I've made. The sunlight streaming through the window illuminated Melissa's face. Her eyes held clear certainty of victory and quiet determination. The life in her womb seemed to respond to her mother's strength, sending small movements. Now, the real show begins. Everything will unfold according to my plan. For this child's sake too, I'll see it through to the end." Her parents' faces showed genuine relief at their daughter's resolve. This wasn't just a revenge story. It was a perfect equation to protect justice and loved ones. Accountant Melissa Brown's most brilliant moment was about to begin. A wind announcing the end of summer swept through Manhattan's streets. In early October, as Central Park's trees began to change color, Melissa quietly watched events unfold from her high-rise apartment on the Upper East Side. "Madam, I've brought your morning paper." The newspaper butler Johnson handed her bold headlines. "Real estate tycoon James Brown's massive fraud exposed. Brown development in management crisis?" After checking on her 2-month-old daughter's sleeping face, Melissa picked up her smartphone. Caroline's flashy posts still filled social media. Photos of drinking champagne in the mansion's living room, selfies with new designer bags. Hashtags included #celeblife, #mansion, #winning@life. However, behind the scenes, reality was steadily moving toward collapse. First, the mansion's problems surfaced. The foundation cracks progressed faster than expected, and leaks reached the second-floor bedroom. Black mold appeared in the basement, spreading through the air conditioning system. Here's the latest inspection report. The building inspector's report revealed even more serious facts. The building's tilt exceeded acceptable limits, with major structural integrity issues. Repair cost estimates had ballooned to $1.5 million. Then, a phone call from the bank made the situation decisive. "Mr. Brown, the foreclosure proceedings on the collateral property have been completed." The bank clerk's matter-of-fact voice resonated over the phone. The total mortgage arrears far exceeded the collateral value. Immediately after, messages from her sister made her phone vibrate. "Help! The bank is foreclosing. What should I do? Melissa, please, help." But there was no reply. Instead, Melissa reviewed the documents arranged on her desk. Everything was proceeding as predicted. In fact, events were moving faster than anticipated. An improvement order arrived from the city. Due to serious safety concerns, immediate major repairs were required. The construction period would be at least 1 year. Living there during this time was deemed impossible. Meanwhile, the crisis at Brown Development was deepening. With construction defects discovered in multiple properties, compensation issues erupted. New financing completely stopped, and existing loans faced immediate collection demands. The company had effectively fallen into bankruptcy. Finally, the day of the decisive confrontation arrived. In a Manhattan courthouse, Melissa and her husband faced each other in the stately marble courtroom. The former real estate tycoon's dignity was completely gone, his face deeply etched with fatigue and impatience. Melissa, on the other hand, was dignified and beautiful, filled with quiet confidence. "So you knew everything, all of this?" her husband asked in a trembling voice. Melissa smiled calmly. "Yes, I knew everything. Including the accounting fraud I couldn't overlook as an accountant. But I'm grateful to you and my sister." "Grateful?" "Yes. Because you gave me and my baby a new life." At those words, her husband was completely defeated. Perhaps he finally understood, in this moment, his wife's true strength that he had never noticed before. The court's judgment was clear. Her husband's fraud was prosecuted as a criminal case, resulting in an 8-year prison sentence. The company completely collapsed, with all assets seized. Further fraudulent activities came to light through internal whistleblowing by executives seeking to protect themselves. Her sister, who had claimed rights to the mansion, was now obligated to pay enormous repair costs and taxes. The amount far exceeded her imagination, making personal bankruptcy inevitable. That night, a final message arrived from her sister. "Let me come back home. I have nothing left." However, their parents' decision was already made. Mother Ellen's reply was short and clear. Choices come with consequences. In her high-rise apartment on the Upper East Side, Melissa held her daughter while watching the sunset over Central Park. The autumn-colored trees glowed beautifully in the twilight. "Hey, baby. Our new life is just beginning." At that moment, her daughter showed a small smile, as if responding to her mother's words. Outside the window, a pleasant autumn breeze announced the arrival of a new season. The view of the skyline from the penthouse window symbolized her hard-won new life. Not revenge, but justice. And above all, a perfect plan to protect those she loved. Everything had concluded exactly according to accountant Melissa Brown's cold calculations. Melissa's new life was steadily taking shape. Her Manhattan high-rise apartment room was bathed in soft morning light. "Emma, it's time to wake up." Melissa entered her 8-month-old daughter's room. In the crib, her daughter awakened at her mother's voice, offering an adorable smile. "Good morning, my angel." As she lifted her daughter, Melissa glanced out the window. A completely different view from a year ago. And a completely different life. In the living room, documents for opening her new accounting firm were neatly arranged. Melissa Wilson and Associates, she had returned to her maiden name and was about to start a new career. "Madam, Mr. David Grant is here." Butler Johnson announced the visitor. David was an appraiser handling Melissa's new real estate investment projects. Their relationship, which began as a professional connection, had recently begun to take on a subtle new dimension. "Good morning, Melissa." Melissa blushed slightly at David's gentle smile. In his early 40s, he was an industry veteran known for his honest work and mild temperament. He had naturally accepted Emma's presence and sometimes even read her storybooks. "I've compiled the survey report. That property you're eyeing in Brooklyn looks like it could be a very good investment." They enjoyed morning coffee while reviewing documents together. Emma played with her favorite stuffed animal under the butler's watchful eye. The scene resembled that of a small family. Meanwhile, her former family's situation had changed dramatically. Her ex-husband James was serving his prison sentence after being convicted of fraud. His company had completely bankrupted, with related companies falling one after another. He had completely disappeared from the industry. Caroline, unable to bear the mansion's debt burden, had completed bankruptcy proceedings. Her luxurious lifestyle had suddenly transformed into a modest life in a suburban apartment. Her social media updates had eventually ceased. "How are things with your parents lately, Melissa?" At David's question, Melissa smiled gently. "Getting better, little by little. Last week, they came to visit and had a wonderful time with Emma." Indeed, her relationship with her parents was bound by deep ties. Her father delighted in his granddaughter's growth, while her mother sent homemade baby food recipes every week. "And your sister?" She thought for a moment before answering that question. "I think I've managed to forgive her. But distance is necessary. She has her own life to live." Melissa's new day was about to begin. Kissing her daughter's cheek, she started preparing for the day. Dressed in a custom-made suit, she wore the pearl necklace inherited from her mother. Her reflection in the mirror showed her looking more dignified and beautiful than ever before. "Shall I drive you?" Today, she unusually nodded at David's offer. "Thank you. And perhaps lunch afterward, if you'd like." They exchanged gentle smiles. Emma, held by the butler, watched her mother and David leave. Manhattan's streetscape gleamed in the spring sunlight. Cherry blossom petals danced in the air, announcing the beginning of a new season. In Melissa's eyes dwelt certain hope for the future. This wasn't a story of revenge, but one of rebirth. A story that began with unreasonable betrayal had become the prologue to a stronger, more beautiful life. So this is what happiness feels like. The spring breeze gently answered Melissa's whisper. Under the cherry blossom trees in Central Park, a new family's story was quietly and surely being woven.